Wrestling is a dangerous business, and it can prove to be fatal inside the squared circle too, as these pro wrestlers' stories tragically illustrate. Sometimes, one wrong move is all it takes to turn a normal sparring match into a heartbreaking tragedy. Brian Ong and the Great Khali found this out the hard way in 2001 when Khali accidentally killed Ong in a dramatic training mishap that no one could have predicted. The incident wasn't a case where the massive Khali was clumsily manhandling another wrestler. Instead, it was Ong who botched the move known as a flapjack. The move is executed by lifting the opponent up and pushing them in the air, so they land on their face and chest when they hit the mat. Instead of going along with this, Ong held on to Khali's shirt and came down hard, severely hurting his head and spine. As such, Khali never faced any repercussions for the dramatic accident. All pro wrestling, on the other hand, found itself in seriously hot legal waters. The fact that APW allowed Ong to keep working despite his many injuries ended up costing the promotion around $1.5 million in a settlement. On March 21, 2015, a Mexican wrestling legend named Perro Aguayo Jr. died. The popular luchador met his fate in a match where he faced another Lucha Libre superstar, Rey Mysterio Jr. The tag team brawl pitted Aguayo with his partner Manic against Mysterio and Extreme Tiger. Unfortunately, the match ended in a tragedy when a flying kick from Mysterio connected with Aguayo. The impact threw Aguayo into the ropes, where he was left unconscious and kneeling. The match went on for 2 minutes before the other wrestlers and the referee realized the man dangling in the ropes was actually seriously hurt and stopped the match. However, nothing could be done to save Aguayo. His vertebrae had snapped when his head hit the ropes. His ultimate cause of death was a heart attack, brought on by a cervical stroke from his broken neck. Unsurprisingly, the incident deeply shocked the apologetic Mysterio, who had unwittingly caused his friend and colleague's untimely demise. However, Aguayo's family understood the situation and asked Mysterio to act as one of Aguayo's pallbearers.
The fans were like, Ray, come on, man, we know what happened. You can't.
Right.
You can't let this affect you.
Dan Spider Quirk was a kid that seemingly everyone liked. He was a talented, passionate, up-and-coming independent wrestler who worked with various promotions and was part of the close-knit Connecticut Championship wrestling community. Apart from wrestling, he did a ton of work behind the scenes and even ran the CCW website. He also had a number of close friends in the industry. Then, on May 28, 2005, tragedy struck. Quirk had a match at a Universal Championship Wrestling event in Taunton, Massachusetts, when he missed a moonsault and crashed headfirst onto the floor outside the ring. Quirk was only 22 when he died. Later that year, the CCW promotion gave Quirk the indie wrestler's equivalent of a Viking funeral when they dedicated their Wrestle Jam 2 event to his memory. Before the show, they held a ceremony where the entire CCW roster came out to the ring and remembered their fallen friend, sharing their favorite stories with the audience. They even had some serious star power among them. Wrestling superstar Matt Hardy was a guest at the event and respectfully stood by Quirk's friends and comrades for the entire ceremony. After some speeches and a highlight reel, the lights went back up. The promoter told the audience that the show would start soon, and it would be all right to laugh and have fun. After all, Spider would have wanted the show to go on. Owen Hart is known as the brother of Bret the Hitman Hart and a member of the legendary Hart wrestling family. He's also known for one of the most dramatic in-ring deaths in the history of professional wrestling. In 1999, Hart's gimmick was a masked superhero character called the Blue Blazer. The then WWF decided to give him a fitting entrance for his appearance on the Over the Edge pay-per-view on May 23rd. Because he was a superhero, the company would make him fly. They set up an elaborate system of wires that would lower the Blue Blazer to the ring from the rafters above, creating a truly magnificent effect. However, this went very wrong. The system malfunctioned while Hart was 78 feet above the ring and sent the helpless wrestler plunging down, where he hit the top rope and then bounced into the ring, narrowly missing the referee.
I felt something brush against the side here on my shoulder. It wasn't enough to knock me down or anything.
Though the incident never made it to television, the 16,000 people at the Kemper Arena witnessed the futile attempts by the medical staff to revive Hart, who died of internal bleeding. At first, some of the audience members thought the whole thing was a stunt and that the falling figure had been a dummy. However, this impression wouldn't last long. The ring announcer soon informed the audience that what had just happened was completely unscripted. Before the event was over, commentator Jim Ross announced to the world that Hart was dead. Larry Moondog Spot Booker had one of the most glorious ring names in all of pro wrestling, with the possible exception of his final tag team partner, Moondog Puppy Love. Booker was a pioneer of the ruthless and hardcore wrestling, working as Larry Latham in Memphis Wrestling until he was picked up by the then WWF as a replacement for a departing member of the Moondogs tag team, Moondog King. Initially partnered with Moondog Rex and working a rabid dog gimmick, Booker had a solid tag career in both the WWF and Memphis and even found some solo success. On November 29, 2003, the most recent version of the Moondogs faced 3 other tag teams in a concession stand brawl match in a Memphis event that celebrated wrestling legend Jerry the King Lawler. The match ended in tragedy when Booker had a sudden heart attack. Describing the events that unfolded, Moondog's manager April Pennington said, "Things were going fine in the ring. He asked me for the belt to use as a weapon. The next thing I knew, he was down." Initially, everyone thought that Booker was simply working the match and selling an injury. However, as soon as Moondog Puppy Love noticed that something wasn't right, the match was hastily finished and the audience was informed of the situation. Sadly, CPR wasn't able to revive Booker, and the 51-year-old wrestler was pronounced dead in the hospital. Wrestler Gary Albright died in the ring during a wrestling show in Pennsylvania. Reportedly, Albright was on the receiving end of a bulldog, a move that involves a wrestler grabbing his opponent's head and jumping forward, thus slamming their head into the mat. While that's certainly true, it should be mentioned that the full story is significantly more complicated. Albright was a former amateur wrestling state champion who transitioned to pro wrestling in 1988. He largely plied his trade in Japan, where his wrestling accolades allowed him to specialize in unscripted, realistic shoot wrestling. Unfortunately, it took a toll on his health. On January 7, 2000, Albright was making a rare US appearance in a match against Lucifer Grimm and was left lying in the ring after a bulldog maneuver. However, it was not the move that killed Albright. The wrestler's heart was in pretty bad shape. It was enlarged, and he had multiple blocked coronary arteries. He also suffered from diabetes. As a result, Albright suffered a fatal heart attack as he took the move, and officials could do little more than pronounce him dead after removing him from the ring. He was only 38. Jesus Javier Hernandez Silva was better known as Oro, and he was only 21 years old when he died. The wrestler met his fate in 1993 when he took part in a 6-man tag team match in Mexico City. It's said that he had told the other wrestlers that he was planning a kobashi bump, a complicated way of taking a move and hitting the mat head first. Exactly how Oro died is subject to some controversy. Reportedly, he oversold a clothesline move with an enthusiastic spin that landed him on his head. One of his opponents immediately tried to pick him up, but Oro collapsed on the mat and died on a stretcher before they could get him in an ambulance. David Shoemaker's book, The Squared Circle: Life, Death, and Professional Wrestling, also tells this version of the story. However, Kyle Dunning of eWrestling News states that the footage of the event doesn't seem to support this. Instead, he says that while Oro did land hard on his head, he managed to stay on his feet for some time, though he wasn't able to land any offensive moves anymore. He eventually collapsed outside the ring. Still, regardless of the precise course of events, everyone can probably agree that Oro's death was extremely tragic and that he left us far too young. Lucha Libre star Cesar Silver King Barón suffered a fatal heart attack in the ring during a performance in London, England on May 11, 2019. Silver King was a famed Mexican luchador who also made an impact on the silver screen. In 2006, he notably starred in the Jack Black comedy Nacho Libre as the antagonist Ramses.
You are the best.
Silver King was wrestling Juventud Guerrera in an event billed the greatest show of Lucha Libre when he unexpectedly fell down in the ring. He managed to get back on his feet after half a minute, only to collapse again while Guerrera, who didn't know anything was amiss, attempted to continue the match. According to Silver King's son, the performer was healthy and drug-free going into the match, but he didn't get back up again. Those who were present called out the event's apparent lack of trained medical personnel and the fact that it took a long time for anyone to notice the wrestler's in-ring predicament. After Guerrera pinned Silver King to end the match, it took a reported 2.5 minutes for anyone to react to what happened. Speaking about the situation that unfolded, a witness said the following: "It was odd that no medics rushed up. It didn't seem like anyone was on hand." Wrestlers then came out and started giving him CPR. Silver King's son later expressed his belief that quicker action might have saved his father's life.